Okay, guys, this is Moshe coming to you from Israel and the Galilee on the 30th of April, and it's about 8:22 in the morning. It's I think it's mid 60s. Let's take a look. 65, and we're going to hit 82. Okay, we're going to talk today about the big thing is they're covering up a lot of damage was put on the 11 American bases that were hit in the Middle East by Iran. It's coming out now. There was extensive damage. They're saying $5 billion. And these were not big bases. Okay. They weren't like the base in, South Korea, and, they weren't like that. Okay. So $5 billion is a considerable chunk of damage, and that estimate might be off. This is being concealed, and this is one of the reasons why Trump is buying time to rebuild. The Trump administration denies that weapons were run down in the fighting with Iran, but what are they going to do? Admit it? So they're probably manufacturing weapons night and day. Missiles take a long time. Bombs don't. I mean, there's other weapons too, So that's, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover Trump announcing that the oil price, that the blockade is going to stay for a while. And that caused a serious spike in oil prices. We'll cover that. I mean, a real spike. And we got that flotilla of 100 boats of about 1,000 people coming to Israel. And while they were a few hundred miles out, they expected to be here on Tuesday. Our Navy went out to interdict them and explain to them the facts of life about this thing. And Israel's still attacking Hezbollah, but more or less just Hezbollah military targets. But we are staying in South Lebanon, and they're telling us we're going to be staying there for the long haul. It's not going to be in and out. It's going to be a long haul. Okay, so that's going on. Gold and silver went down a tiny bit. We'll get through all these things, but the main theme we'll cover with the news is what's Trump up to? What's he doing? And I think now we're learning. There is some sort of a ceasefire between America, Israel, and Iran, because we're not attacking Iran and Iran's not attacking Israel or U.S. bases, so something's going on. Just the blockade stuff is happening, and Iran is also rebuilding, and they're not demonstrating any real intention to light this thing up again. So that could be for a multitude of reasons. We'll get into that, but Trump is saying that it's very uncertain who you're talking to in Iran and who's in control. He doesn't like it, but he's putting up with it. There's a lip reader that was reading lips on Trump talking to King Charles, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about if lip readers can really do this. The answer is yes, and I'll prove it to you. All right, into the live stream. Let's see how we're doing there. Oh, we got some mysterious stuff brewing with Pakistan and Iran. Not real bad, but they're sort of breaking Trump's blockade. Sort of, kind of. Trump's blockade. All right, we got sound. I'm going to put up a post, which is going to go quickly. And it's the mommy dog lecturing some other dog. The mommy dog lecturing some other dog. All right, I'm going to put this up and we'll get going. All right, I'm going to put this up and we'll get going. Make sure it goes up. And make sure it goes up. People coming in and okay. All right. Being a Bible believing site, Old and New Testament, I'm going to do some praise, and I have no control over anybody joining in or not joining in. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay. So let's get into it. Greta Thurman on this these 100 ships coming here to what is their cover story this time? Their cover story is bringing medicinal kind of help, and our soldiers I believe boarded one or two or three or something like that of their boats yesterday, hundreds of miles out. And they were all upset because the soldiers had weapons. And what are they going to do? Go on the boat without weapons and have fist fights with them? So they told them not to come. The medical equipment they got for the medical relief, they said, constitutes some drugs and condoms. So I don't know what kind of drugs they're bringing. If I was going to guess, various antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, blood pressure medicine, Don't know what else. I think it would be dangerous for them to carry narcotics. Um, Muscle relaxers, maybe stomach medicine. Um, I don't know. I don't know. They could have had eye drops for. They could have ear drops, stuff like that. I guess. Okay, got a prayer request. Don't want to forget. I'll do the prayer, and you guys can agree with it if you're a believer. Okay, just the believers should agree with it. My Heavenly Father Jehovah, I pray for R.M. Romeo Mike, R.M. Romeo Mike. I pray for healing of the eyes for R.M. Thank you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay. And you guys, even if it's a video, you can agree with it. It'll work fine. Okay. Um, the United States Marines were probably on a Navy ship, of course, boarded a container ship in the Arabian Sea, suspected of sailing to an Iranian port, thus violating Trump's sanctions and blockade and so forth. I think the ship was turned back. I don't think they confiscated it. They may have. They may have. I don't know. Trump formally did reject Iran's offer to end their blockade and you end your blockade. So they rejected it and said the blockade stays until a nuclear deal. So Trump is not just interested in a nuclear deal. Trump is barking about the nuclear deal because he's trying to tell the people in the world, I'm going to save you from going to bed one night and being evaporated by Iran's nukes. That's what he's doing. Okay. So far, the Iranian war has cost the U.S. $25 billion. That could be real. I mean, that's a lot of money. I think Trump would rather get killed than take $25 billion and dedicate it to the homeless and the poor people. If he wasn't that way, he wouldn't be president. Tell me one president that ever really went out and tried to take care of the poor people and help them. With Biden and Obama, they were taking care of the poor refugee people that weren't in this country, that just showed up for a handout. They were taking care of them, but not Americans. Americans are just supposed to pay for it. Most of the costs of this $25 billion came from munitions. Now, bombs are not that expensive, but they cost, especially when they use the JDAMs, the smart bombs. But they used a lot of missiles, and those things really are expensive. And you got to remember, you bring an aircraft carrier over there, right? And it's got, 5,000 people. Okay, so let me just give you some numbers, just to give you a little. Wait a minute, what's wrong here? Come on, iPad, cut it out. What? Okay. The average paycheck on the 5,000 people, I would say, would be small, 2,500 a month. And that's a little light. Let's go 3,000 on that. $3,000 times 5,000. You got 15 million, not billion, in payroll just on one aircraft carrier. Okay. So if you got three, you're at about 45. Well, of course, one has 6,000. You got about 50,000. You got about, $50 million a month, $50 million a month just on the payroll. And the fuel costs. I mean, these boats, they burn a gallon probably every 10 or 20 feet. Then we got to take into account food, medical care for the people. I mean, it just goes on and on. Oh, they don't have to. If they're nuclear, they don't burn the fuel like that. No, it's different. I don't know if they're all nuclear, but yeah, you're right. Then Lamra, whatever, they don't have to pay for the diesel. But it's expensive. But then you take into account the airplanes. What do? Burn a gallon every 3 seconds or something like that. It's expensive. All right. It's expensive. Well, we put another order in for supplements, and I saw they usually would ship it the same day. It sat for about 3 days, roughly, and now it's shipping. So things are starting to improve. eBay is not shipping to Israel. Amazon will ship to Israel, but just through postal service, and it's free. If you get an order of more than $50, it's free. And if your order is less than $150 and you ship it with the post, you don't pay any tax and you don't pay any shipping. So you got to give credit where credit's due. And it takes probably 5-6 weeks, they're estimating, to get here. As far as I know, several, not just one or two, a bunch of postal services around the world. Japan is one. A lot of Europe is another, like Spain is another. Have stopped. Their post office won't deliver to Israel during this war thing. They don't want to be bothered in getting it, cancellations and refunds and returns, and they don't want it yet. So some European countries are shipping to other countries that will deliver to Israel, one of which is the Netherlands. So if you're going to buy a T-shirt in, I don't know, Spain or something like that, and they're not shipping to Israel, what they do is they ship to the Netherlands, and then from the Netherlands, they got a company or something that remails it to Israel. So that's an interesting development, but I do believe America is shipping. If Amazon is shipping, America must be using the post office. I don't know. Okay, if the war starts up again, then everything's going to get stuck in limbo. So it's a dangerous thing. And the Israeli retailers at times are 1/3 or 1/2 higher in price. Even if you take into account the 18% VAT if your order's over $150, and you take into account the shipping, they're still like, 25, 35% cheaper than the Israeli merchants. There's something wrong with these Israeli merchants. They just all want to get as much money out of the people of Israel as they possibly can. It's really odd that they want to be that way. There must be heavy discrimination against anybody that emerges as a discounter. It seems that they do some kind of price fixing, and you know, sometimes they're so expensive. You know, can you get the items quicker in Israel? Yeah, but not always. Um, I bought some magnifying glasses, good ones that really work. Most of the magnifying glasses that people buy are overstating the power of the magnifying glass. Okay. They'll call it 10 power, and it normally is not more than 2 or 3 power. These are cheap magnifying glasses. They're acrylic, so it's not a magnifying glass, it's a magnifying plastic. Okay. And the real ones are aspheric, they call it. You know, they cost much more. The difference is the ones you buy are weak and they're not precise, they blur. Okay. So you can get a 2 power or a 3 power. That's about it. That's and they can call it 10 power, 20 power, 15 power, whatever they want, and it's still nothing. I don't believe they could get them more than about 3 power. Okay. And it's a lousy 3 power because it's that plastic, it's blurry. All right. So anyway, I ordered 2 of these things. One was a 5 power and the other one was a 9 power. And the guy didn't ship them for 2 or 3 days, and then it took about a week to get up here, just about a week. And you can get packages from Japan, the United States, that fast now using a courier, which costs. But the courier in Israel costs normally, let's think, about $11, $12 for a courier. That brings it to your door. But you see, sometimes they'll bring it in 2 days. What happens is you place the order, the company fills it, they call for pickup, they pick it up. Then the next day it's in the warehouse. Then the next day the guy's calling you on the phone. I'm outside with your package. See? Okay. So we're still okay. Sorry, they don't pop up on me, and they blocked us out for a minute. I got it back. I was explaining. Let's do some explanation over what the doctrines are of the Shiite, not the Sunnis. Some Sunnis are problematic, but mostly the Shiites, which Iran is, which Hezbollah is, which Hamas is, which the Houthis are, which the Iraqis are. Okay? The countries that have kings and emirs and dictators, whatever they want, whatever the dictator calls himself, okay, sultan and whatever, they're generally not into this doctrine. Okay? See, the Shiites, it's just important. You never really get this in the paper or they don't talk about it. Fox News will never talk about it, nor any Hannity or the others. They never, ever. I'll explain it to you. They, okay, they have different belief systems like say the Catholics and the Lutherans, or the Catholics and the Baptists, or the Baptists and the Pentecostals, or maybe they are Pentecostal. It's like that. They're all differing. Okay, are the Buddhists that way? I have no idea. Are the Hindus that way? I don't think the Buddhists and the Hindus are that way, but I don't know. Okay, I just don't know. I had a buddy once that was a Hindu. What were they called? A sheik or something. The fighting ones. They study fighting and they carry a weapon all the time to defend the other India people from being forced out of Hinduism to convert them Mohammedanism by Muslims with forced conversion. So they don't cut their hair. They wear it wrapped up in a turban, so their hair could be a meter long. Um, they're allowed to in some countries carry a bladed weapon, and they'll conceal it maybe in their turban or who knows. You could put, I mean, what's the name of that company? Spyderco makes a knife called the salt something. It has a yellow plastic handle. It has a blade that's got a serrated edge and really sharp. You could go to a tough steak and just gently cut it. You won't have to press hard, you know. This is really a sharp knife. And it's used for people on boats, cutting rope, fish, or whatever, you know, because it's supposed to be impervious to the water without rusting and stuff like that. Some kind of special stainless. It's a cheap knife. I don't know, 30, 40, $50. It's not an expensive knife. It has no weight to it. I think 2 ounces, 3 ounces. I mean, nothing. 4 ounces max, right? It's durable, it's tough, and it's not quite 3 inches, but it's approaching and it's very dangerous. Okay, you don't penetrate with that. It slices, and with the serration, man, it'll really rip up. So you could take that and you could put it up under the collar of your shirt. I mean, who's going to know? Somebody would have to, you know, pat you down and actually touch the collar of your shirt. Most cops aren't going to be that meticulous, especially if you put it on the side, or they might not pat you at all. Okay. They're predominantly looking, and I used to work in law enforcement, and I can remember searching people. I can remember searching so many people in a day where I would get stomach cramps. That was when they assigned me to work at the jail. I was a regular deputy sheriff, but I'd be working at the jail on visiting day, and he got to search these people. Not the, I wasn't worried about the guests. We were searching the inmates because they passed stuff. So we used to be very polite, and me and another guy, we'd take him in the bathroom and search him. We wouldn't strip search him. We'd basically run our hands up and down, and you would be, I mean, your hands would get filthy. It's a dirty job. You got to touch these people and their pants, legs, and yeah. So we would do it so much, and I was a young kid. I'd get stomach cramps from bending down so much, and I was, you know, in okay shape for sure, and it was still so much, you know. So anyway, I know about searching people, and you are easily going to overlook it. I mean, you know, how many cops in the street are going to tell somebody, take your shoes off? And they're not going to normally want to put their hands in the guy's shoes, like he might have running shoes, right? Now, they might have gloves, and then they might put the gloves on and do it, but they're generally not doing it. Why? Because the suspect in the street probably does not have a good enough weapon concealed in his shoe to be a threat. Could he have a razor blade in there? 100%. You know, in your running shoe, you got a rubber piece like an insole, and you could pick that up and put it under there, and you're going to escape a lot of searches. Okay, with a razor blade, but a razor blade is not that much of a fighting implement against the cop. He could use his collapsible baton and keep you away and draw his gun and just kill you, or just draw his gun and kill you. while he's drawing his gun, you're coming at him and he's falling back and he gets boom, 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 and it's over. Even with his anemic 9 millimeter, 2, 3 rounds, you're going to be going down. You're not going to be walking around like everything's okay. Maybe 1 round, maybe 2, but not 3. I'd be shocked if that'd be pretty unusual. It could happen. I mean, people on drugs could take more rounds than that. But anyway, you're not going to be effective after you take 3 rounds. I mean, okay. And what do you do with the razor blade? I mean, the cop generally has clothes on. So, your blade is 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch. I mean, you got to hold it. You don't have a big, what are you going to do? You're going to cut his carotid. He's got collars too. So he's not going to let you cut the carotid. You can cut his eyes. Okay, but with one of these knives, you can really create a serious fight. Okay, so people could conceal that. So the sheik or whatever they call them, these Hindus carry some kind of knife. It's more symbolism than anything else. But I got along with this guy. We got along pretty good. Yeah, of course, he knew I was a Jew. I was a believer. He didn't seem to mind that. It would be, I don't know, but we got along fine. They're nice people. They like Israel. They don't go around saying they want to kill Israel or anything like that. They like us because they fought the British and we fought the British. And they respect us and they like us. And there's a lot of people that are apparently Jews of various sorts that live in Israel from India. Not tons, but you see them. They're pretty nice people. I wouldn't worry about them, Okay, moving along. So what do the Shiites believe? Well, the Sunni types follow, for the most part, the Quran, period. There's another book called the Hadith, I think, Hadith, that the Shiites use that's not exactly the Quran literal. It's a commentary about the Quran, something like that. It's an additional book. It's not the Quran per se. So the Sunnis don't listen to it. Okay, what's an analogy? Well, we follow the Bible, Old and New Testament. The rabbis created an additional Bible that they apparently wrote themselves called the Talmud. They say that Moses wrote the written law, which is what you read in your Bible, the first 5 books. He wrote that as a deception for the heathen. And the real law was an oral law that he didn't write down, and he gave it to the rabbis, which we know. Okay, and the rabbis wrote it down and compiled it in a book called the Talmud. So they have a written law of Moses also. What is this? It doesn't make sense. Of course, it's not true. So it's like that. Okay, but it's maybe a little bit more closer to the Quran. Now, I don't believe the Quran's a sacred holy book for 1 minute, okay? Not for a minute. I think it's nonsense. It's like as sacred and holy as the Tibetan Book of the Dead or something. I don't pay attention to it. Okay, but I'm just telling you what they do, okay? So they believe that from this Hadith book, that what's going to happen. Remember the red heifers? Okay, that stuff fell apart. We're not going to be using red heifers anymore, okay? Yeshua gave us our righteousness from the work he did when he died for us, okay? And God accepts that righteousness. So therefore, why do you need the red heifer? You don't. if you're going to say you need the red heifer, you're going back to the works of the law. I can't be acceptable unless I got sprinkled with the water that has the ashes of the red heifer in it. Well, that's not the case, because if you believe that, you're downplaying the work that Yeshua did. But we don't want to do that, of course. It's foolish. So, what comes to pass is this theology that the Orthodox Jews got a red heifer, or they'll soon have a red heifer, or whatever. I don't think they got a good red heifer, by the way. But anyway, they'll have a red heifer, and they're going to prepare the water with the ashes of the red heifer, and they could sprinkle it on the people, and that will make them what they refer to as ceremonial clean. Now, this is their fear. Under the recent administration with Netanyahu, where he's forced to be moving from a centrist over to between a centrist and a right wing. He's in the middle there somewhere. And that because of Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And that means that the various Jews that are in Orthodoxy or ultra-Orthodoxy can go to the Temple Mount and pray at certain times. It's been opened up, okay? So they believe that they're going to go up to the Temple Mount, these ultra-Orthodox, and get sprinkled with the red heifer water, and they're going to get a sense of how holy we are, and they're going to say, let's take this Temple Mount back. And they're going to destroy the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay? That's what they believe. Okay? So that's why they're fighting for that. Then they also believe, as a follow-up, that when they get this knockdown of the mosque up there, they're going to put a temple up there, and they're going to have what the Muslims, these Shia Muslims, believe to be a false Messiah. Because the true Messiah would never go against the Muslims, right? Okay, so they think it's a false Messiah that's going to tell the Jews that they have to kill all the Muslims. This is what they believe. This is what Satan's teaching them. So therefore, as a result of this, they need to kill the Jews first, or the Jews are going to massacre the Muslims. Do you understand? That's what the problem is here. Okay? The Sunnis, like UAE, Saudi, several other countries, are not very, they're not very interested in this theology, because they say it's not the real stuff. They also say the Dome of the Rock, you're lying about it, because they say that Muhammad ascended, I believe, up to heaven from the Dome of the Rock. Of course, we know he didn't ascend up to heaven at any time, any place, from anywhere, but they don't, and they attribute the Sunnis don't buy this, but the Shiites believe that the ascension of Muhammad came from the Dome of the Rock area, or the Dome of the Rock itself, and therefore it's a super holy place, and they have control over it, and they seem to refer to it as the fourth holy site in Mohammedanism. The number one is the Black Rock, they call it, I think, in Saudi Arabia. That's the primo one. And they believe that every Muslim needs to go to that Black Rock site once in their lifetime. Are supposed to get into heaven or something, and that's called a hajib, Hajis or something to make that pilgrimage, okay? So the Saudis are responsible for maintaining that site and getting it all set up when they come to make their pilgrimage. What do? Well, they set up a lot of these large tents that have bedding in them. And the Muslims go there and they put air conditioning in the tent and they could sleep there. I think they maybe some might stay a day, or I don't know. There's a series of exercises they go through. One of them has a rock or something, and they make it out to be, or a pillar, I don't know. And they make it out to be Satan, and they throw rocks at this image of Satan. Pretty sick, isn't it? Okay, so then they go to other, so maybe they spend a day or two, I don't know, and they go to the Black Rock thing, and then they go home. They frequently have riots, where they stampede each other. I don't know what brings that about, but the Saudis have water for them. I think they provide some superficial medical, which is probably if they get heat exhaustion or something like that, they probably put them in a medical tent, run an IV fluid in them with ringers or something for electrolytes, and then kick them out, revive them, So back to the Shiites. So they believe it's important that nothing ever happens to the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that stops the Jews from ever having a temple and getting that false Messiah. Now, the Satan bots that run these terrorist organizations are not really Muslims. They just say they are. They're Satan bots. And I don't know if they believe or not believe this doctrine, but they're definitely involved in wiping out Israel. And this is the reason that they portray to the people. If we don't get them first, they're going to get us. So they're trying to stop prophecy. And it goes all the way back to the Balfour Declaration when Jews were given a chance to live in Israel again, called Palestine back then. And they came here and there was constant fighting with the Arabs and the Muslims and the Jews there. And Great Britain was in charge of it then. And they they ended the immigration around 1925. So it went from 1917 to 1925. Then they didn't end it completely. They severely curtailed it. They cut it back a lot. And then during World War II, the British wouldn't let the Jews escape Hitler to come safe harbor in Palestine because Hitler never really did anything in that area. So the British were pretty bad, and the Hindus knew how bad the British were, and they got rid of them. and it was supposedly done with Mahatma Gandhi. And I have seen a lot of people believe Mahatma Gandhi was really a Muslim, and he was teaching these people to be peaceful pacifists and not do anything, meditate and hum and stuff like that, instead of getting a gun and killing them. So I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea, but a lot of people believe it. So they got rid of the British, and then we got rid of the British in May 15th, 1945. Well, the British actually got rid of themselves. The interesting thing is the British kept 100,000 soldiers in Israel, which had, I don't know, a population of about 2 million, maybe a million, I don't know, pretty small. And when they occupied all of India with the billion plus people, they had the same amount of soldiers occupying India, 100,000. Goes to show you what a hotbed this place is. So Modi, who runs India now, is a Hindu, and he doesn't like anything but Hinduism. I mean, he's an espot, but he says he's a Hindu, So he promotes Hinduism, which doesn't go over well with the millions and millions and millions of Muslims in his country. He's loaded with them. And it certainly doesn't go well with the Christians. But he doesn't, at this point in time, he doesn't actively persecute the Christians or the Hindus. He doesn't send police or soldiers out to break their meetings up or, put them into custody. He's not doing that, He's got a lot of problems with his people in his country. He's got poverty like in America and Europe you don't know from. I mean, he's got real poverty. And they still run around playing this game of the caste system. And there's a lot of very wealthy people living in India. I've never been to India. I don't know what it's like. Okay. I mean, it sounds like it's crowded, crowded, crowded. It also sounds like there's probably more rural areas you could go to and live, live cheaper. I know they sell these cheap cars for about $3,000. A real car. The walls of the car or the body of the car is probably made with very thin metal, or sometimes they use press board. Russians had, I don't know if they still do, press board cars. That when the body wasn't made out of metal, so you got to be pretty careful about getting hit. If another press board car hit you, that's one thing. But if a nice F-250 pickup hit you, oh boy, That's because they don't have any of the safety standards, So the chances are these $3,000 cars in India are not really up to snuff. They probably got a seatbelt and they probably got special glass in the windows, and it might be minimal. I look, I don't really know. Maybe you'd have to spend $4,000 or $5,000 to get a really safe one. But if India could sell a car for $3,000, what makes you believe America or Israel couldn't do it also? One big reason, volume. They wouldn't sell that many. That's why. Israel used to make their own cars in the 50s. They looked like Etzels. Well, they had a couple of brands, but one big one, and it had they had a regular sedan, I think a 2-door and a 4-door. They had a station wagon. And I don't think they had a convertible. Maybe they did. And you don't see, even when I was in Israel living there the first time, like many, 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 many years ago, decades ago, you didn't see any of them running around. I think probably after 10 or 15 years, there were also gone. They weren't on the street anymore. So, probably by 1970 or maybe 75, they were gone. I don't know how many years they ran the car company. And Netanyahu doesn't want cars manufactured in Israel, that piece of garbage. Why? I'll tell you why. Because he taxes the cars 100 to 150%. And if they're making cars in Israel, tremendous amount of people would buy them unless it was a piece of crap, which would be most unlikely. So they would buy it, and then they don't get that tax revenue. What a piece of garbage he is, He's such a piece of garbage. So he has no interest in promoting this, which is, he's a curse on this country, He obviously is not answering to the God of Israel. That's a no-brainer with his behavior. So they used to say back in the 90s that we need to get to 9 million people. We were in the 6 million-ish. We need to get to 9, and then we can make our own cars. Well, now we're up to 10, and this garbage bucket Netanyahu still won't do it. Do you know how easy it would be to get foreign companies to come in here and do it? All you have to do is give them some tax concessions and give them some land to build on. That would be it. And they'd be here. They could take these cars and build them here, and they could export them to the surrounding Arab nations. They could export them into Africa easily. I mean, you could drive into Egypt, you're in Africa. So they could export into Africa easily, and bring them into Europe, but they're probably not going to be up to European standards, so you could bring it into Africa probably. Anyway, they don't do it. They used to, before Netanyahu started his reign of curse on Israel, they had, Ford was making trucks in Nazareth. I don't think they do it anymore. They had a plant they hired Arabs. Henry Ford's company didn't want to hire Jews, so they went to Nazareth, which is loaded with Arabs, and hired Arabs to work in their factory, making, it was Ford trucks. So it wasn't retail commercial vehicles, but people bought them. They were kind of almost like an SUV, but they were 65% truck, maybe 35% like an SUV, but they didn't ride or feel or look like or have the creature comforts of an SUV. They mostly had the feel of an industrial truck. That's it. So anyway, that's the problem. Why the Shiites want to kill us. Okay. The other issue that's a big issue is the Shiites don't believe in a Muslim country having a king, an emir, a sultan, a prince, any of that. Okay? None of that. Because he steals the wealth. That's what God said when when you were talking to the days of King Saul, he's going to put your sons in his army, he's going to tax you, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. They become egomaniacs, and that's how they all are. They have multiple palaces. They live in 100,000 square foot palaces. Some are more modest. They drop down to 40, 50,000. And they put it on, 35, 50 acres or 20 acres, with fountains and grounds and gardens and, all this stuff. And then they start collecting Arabian stallion, expensive horses, Brahmin bulls, racing camels, expensive birds, where they have falcons and hawks that they go hunting with. And, it's just sick things like this. It's sickness, And they collect jewelry, and they'll eat off of gold plates. And, this is where they go. And the Shiites say, They oppose this, but then they tell us that Khomeini, who got killed, who's a Shiite guy, had several $billions. Yeah. So he was basically doing the same thing that a king or an emir or a sultan would do. Okay? He just called himself supreme leader. See, their idea of the way it should be, the Shiite idea, is that they should have what's called the caliphate. Okay, all the 50-something Muslim states in the area merge into a caliphate, like 50 states in America merge into the United States. Well, 50 Muslim nations would become like a state, like in Arizona or Texas, and they merge them together into a caliphate, whatever they're going to call it. And that caliphate is not run by a Congress and a president and a Supreme Court. They don't have any of that. It's run by a caliph. And a caliph is nothing more than a king. But different, not exactly. He's half political leader and he's half spiritual leader. Okay? And that's what they want to do. Okay? And of course, Iran wants to be the run. They want to run it. And Erdogan in Turkey wants to be the caliph. And I don't know who else wants to be the caliph. I don't know. That's what they want to do. Okay? And then they got one guy, and then that one guy could raise an army of 5 or 10 million people and, go wipe out if they had an army of 10 million and they, had, 9 or 10 aircraft carriers, 150 Navy vessels, and 5 or 10,000, war aircraft, they got the money from the oil to do it, they could raise an army and just start killing everybody. It would be Hitler on steroids. That's what you'd have. So it's not going to ever happen. It's not going to come to pass. Okay, it's not in prophecy. It's a joke. Egypt's not going to go with them. Saudi Arabia won't. The UAE won't. Qatar won't. Kuwait won't. Jordan won't. It's just it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so that's the basis of the problem. All right. So we know that, and that means most Israelis do not know what I just told you. The vast, vast majority don't know. The ones that are high up in intelligence or something like that may be briefed like this. It's not a national secret. I just don't think they know it. They don't bother teaching it. So they know that these Israelis that are savvy to it know that they're trying to exterminate us. So sending us into the other nations it might calm them down for a while. Satan's behind it. It might calm them down for a while. It's genocide. He'd really like to genocide us, Never going to happen. All right. So I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of that. Okay. So Trump's considering a long blockade. Now, our oil prices spiked as a result of this, and I'll tell you where they went. And they went up uncomfortably high, I'm telling you. And I'll give you the breakdown. The WTI, West Texas oil, the American oil, 119 a barrel. We went up about $25. Like nothing. All Trump had to do was say it's a long-range blockade. And the Brent, the European, went up to 126. So these things are roughly doubling from our old figure of $60 a barrel, which lasted a long time. 60, 63, 65, 60. So they went up almost double or double. 120 is double and the Brent's 126. So, it doubled already from back several months. Gold minor drop 45.42, silver 71. So somebody's suppressing it. It shouldn't be that low. They're suppressing it. All right. So if this blockade keeps going, we might see the barrel price. This is the paper oil, not the real what you got to pay. What you really got to pay could be most normally $5 to $25 a barrel more. Okay. There's nobody that really knows where we're going to go with this, with the prices, but I think $200 to $300 a barrel is within range. You just got to wait for things to develop. And some people say I'm too retarded in this. It could be 500 a barrel. There's a very small amount of people that think 1,000 a barrel. I tend to think in the 200 to 300 range a barrel. Trump is thinking, and I agree with him. I think it was a brilliant idea. I'm not a real Trump aficionado at all. I don't care for Trump very much, but I give credit where credit is due. Trump came up with a brilliant idea. He doesn't have to bomb them. He can break their back just by the blockade. Now, we're getting new figures now about how long it's going to take for Iran to bust out or bust up from not being able to sell their oil. In other words, what we're talking about here is basically this. The oil Iran, they're saying it's 12 to 22 days now. A few days ago, they were telling us it was going to be by Monday or Tuesday this past week, this week we're in now, they were going to be choked up already. No, now they're saying they got another 12 to 22 days. And let's talk about why that probably is. Because they're delivering oil by railroad trains to China. And that is probably taking the load off. In other words, the oil's not topping off. It's high up, but they keep taking a train load out. I don't know how many days it's taking the, they probably turned the pumping down as low as they could without it breaking anything. So maybe it normally was pumping at 2 million a barrel. 2 million barrels a day, they might have pushed it down to 1 million or 500,000. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe there is no throttle control on that. I have no idea. But they're saying now they got 12 to 22 days till their oil is so full in their storage tanks, they have to shut the pipeline down. The only way you're going to shut the pipeline down is to shut the oil wells down, the refineries and all that. So they got to do a shutdown, and that's going to be massive complications. Normally, if they were going to do a shutdown to so now we got another, what we're looking at with Trump is it could be 3 weeks more of this blockade till Iran has to shut down, and then maybe another week. So it might be a month. And what's Trump sitting there thinking? He's saying, well, what do I care? I got time. Okay, my soldiers aren't getting killed. I'm not dropping bombs and shooting missiles. Israel's not getting bombed. The other Arab states aren't getting attacked. So we'll wait them out. In the meantime, Trump is trying to have his missile factories and bomb factories, churn out the weapons as quick as they can. Missiles are slow, guys. Missiles come very slow. Bombs don't take a long time to make. You have a casing. Yeah. Hello? Yeah, you're out. I'll come out now. Okay? Right now, right now. Give me 1 minute, okay? I'll be right there. Okay. All right. I got a delivery guy. He's right there now, so it's easy. When I heard the dog barking on his phone, I know he's right there. I'll be right back. This will be quick. right, what are you barking at now? Come on, knock it off with the barking. Sorry about that. That's Israel. You work for the Korean, they don't work for you. Oh. All right. So the early reports that Iran was going to have to shut down their oil now have been extended. And the problem with this is as follows. Iran is going to get their hands on trains from other countries. Like what? India. Hey, you want oil, Modi? You got to send me a couple of trains. And other countries, China, send me some trains. And then they can get to where they're sending 3 or 4 trains a week out. And they could maybe throttle back the pipeline flow, and they could stay almost indefinitely or maybe indefinitely until Israel or America blows up their railroad tracks, in which case China will hit the moon, and Modi, if he's going to buy from them, he'll hit the moon, get so mad. So I don't know how well Trump's plan is working, cutting a lot of their money off. With the trains, they're probably losing 75% of their income. But he's going to have to blow the trains up. How hard is it to blow the trains up? It's a joke. Nothing to it. You just look for critical areas in the track, like where they're crossing a river or they're crossing a big chasm and they have like a bridge, and you just blow the bridges up. It'll take a year to rebuild the bridge, and you keep blowing it up. Every time they keep rebuilding it before they finish it, you blow it up again. So that's a possibility. Okay. So I told you we intercepted the latest flotilla coming to Israel, which is like 100 boats with 1,000 people. They're a few hundred miles out. We told them if they want to bring their medical assistance to Gaza, that's fine. You're invited to. We welcome you. Pull into Ashdod, which is at the top of Gaza, and we will offload you can offload it. We'll offload your medical supplies and equipment, and we'll do a security check to make sure we know what's in it. We don't want you bringing, bombs or whatever, right? And after the security check, we give you, our assurances that we're going to deliver it to Gaza and give it to them, and they will. Okay? They're not going to comply with that. So what else did we tell them? And what else did we do? Well, the flotilla organizers wrote on their social media that motorboats identified with Israel. So these were like Coast Guard cutters, probably something like that. Or they could have been destroyers, I don't know, or frigates, I don't know. There was probably 2 out there, maybe 3, but probably just 2. Identified with Israel approached the boats while armed with semi-automatic weapons. Now, that's rifles, but generally they have a switch where you can do a 3-shot burst, full auto, like brrr, or semi-automatic. They probably didn't know that. I don't think we fired at them at all. Participants in the flotilla were ordered to move to the front of the ship and get down on their hands and knees. Well, you see, that would give the Israeli commandos on these boats a lot of warning. If your hands and knees are on the floor of the boat, or you would say the deck of the boat, if they're going to harm you, they have to move their whole body. They could move one hand probably and pull a gun out of a waistband or something like that, but you're going to see movement. And that's why they did it. If you wish to legally transfer aid to Gaza, you may do so through established and recognized channels. Please change your course and return to your port of origin. If you are carrying humanitarian aid, you are invited to proceed to the port of Ashdod, where the aid will undergo security inspection and subsequently be transferred to the Gaza Strip. You are required to change your course. The message continued by stating, any further attempt to sail towards Gaza places your safety at risk and leaves the IDF no choice but to take all necessary measures at its disposal to enforce a lawful maritime security blockade. It is dangerous to remain on your current course. If you continue your attempt to breach the maritime blockade, we will stop your vessel and act to seize it through legal proceedings in court. You bear all responsibility for your actions. Okay, so they're going to confiscate the boats. Then they're going to put them in custody, but soft custody. They'll probably go to a military base or something. They're not going to throw them in a hardcore jail cell. They might put them temporarily in a cell or something, and then they're going to start processing them to get them out of the country. A court will quickly issue an order to expel them. It'll probably cost us $1 or $2 million before it's over. You bear full responsibility for your actions. Earlier, the IDF said it was enforcing the hang on, I lost my place. Earlier, the IDF said it was enforcing the maritime security blockade on the Gaza Strip and was prepared for a range of scenarios to be carried out in accordance with instructions from the political echelon. Beulah, what are you doing? Oh. So this is just another game. The Greta Thunberg critter, whatever Thunberg, I think is in. Greta. You know that one, the Greta thing. isn't on this. They have some sort of power fighting internally, and Greta's not on top position anymore or something. So she's sitting this one out. She's been ineffective at it anyway, so they want to try to get a new regime of protesters or something to try this. The thing is just really designed to get attention. What do they? I mean, let's break it down. Do they really think we're going to just let them walk into Gaza? Do you know what would probably happen to them if they walked into Gaza? What are the chances of them being raped, male and female? High. What about being held hostage? That could happen too. Do you think they respect them? These people coming in there have morals and values that are very contradictory to what the Shiite Muslims believe. Okay? And they're not going to be nice. I mean, they'll say, oh, you're for our cause. It'll start out nice, but watch how it develops. And then how are they going to leave once they got into Gaza? And how would we know that the ones leaving were were not the terrorists sneaking out? It's got so much problems. And then what do we know about what they're bringing them? It could be communication devices. It's crazy. So it's not designed to be effective. If they did come, what effect would it have? They would stay in Gaza. They would get somehow media attention. They probably have satellite phones that could use the internet. You have it's a system. You have a satellite dish, like a little, dish like this, and you connect it to a laptop, I think a special laptop. You can broadcast your internet out on the satellite the satellite phone system. So they would be broadcasting and talking about the deplorable, disgusting treatment in Gaza, how we're crucifying people upside down, how we're cutting their bodies apart and sewing their parts to China or other countries. This is what would be going on. No, they would tell people how we're holding, 3-year-old children prisoner, in a 9x12 cell, putting 20 of them in there. This is the kind of thing that would go on. That's all. So it's just to bring attention to themselves. They're not going to be doing any particular physical help for Gaza. That's not going to happen. It's just they're kind of using Gaza to get their own publicity, This is maybe true and maybe not true. I think Trump may have said this. The largest U.S. aircraft carrier is going to leave the Mideast. Now that probably, I don't know which one it is, but it could be the Lincoln leaving. It might be. I think the Ford might be the largest one. I'm unsure. And there's rumors that a 4th aircraft carrier is on the way, but these are not confirmed. Okay, the rumors about a 4th aircraft carrier are not confirmed. One of the names that came up was the Dwight Eisenhower carrier. But what this could be is this. The Lincoln's been here a long time, okay? and I think the Ford may be also, I'm not sure. But anyway, they could be rotating one of those out. So they might be bringing a replacement carrier in and then rotate one of these out. So it'll look like a fourth carrier. Now, if war breaks out when the fourth one shows up before the other one leaves, well, now you got four carriers, you know. That could be the case. I don't know. Okay. So this is in the rumor mill right now. We don't have any firm anything on this, but it looks like it could be true. I'll just leave it like that. But no confirmation. Trump is really in favor of his blockade, and he really has a good plan here. Okay, and um, he likes it, but we're not being told whether or not he's going to strike Iran continually. So, in other words, if he's looking at this, Iran's running railroad trains full of oil, and it's not going to boil over, and they're getting some money coming in. Trump might say, "Okay, I had enough. Let me take something else out." And then they could start up. They threatened the UAE, Iran did. And they're not empty threatening. They threatened for real. Okay. And this is why, well, it's stronger than a threat. Let me explain what they did. They told their people that went as refugees to the UAE. In other words, they had some people in Iran that went to the UAE and never came back. Okay. They told them they better get out of the UAE because they're going to basically, in different words, they were saying blow the UAE back into the dark ages without all that technology. And remember, the UAE just left OPEC. And the reason they left OPEC is because Iran's in there. They don't want to be with Iran. So this could cause Iran to attack them. And that would be high probability that Trump would start bombing Iran again and invite Israel to do so. And Netanyahu would be in great danger of tripping over his own feet and falling. He'd be running so fast to blow Iran up. I mean, he hates them. So we don't know yet. Now, this is really bad, and it came from the U.S., and this has probably got consequences on the way. Maybe not. The U.S. says the Palestinian Authority, that's out of Ramallah, the West Bank, so to speak, Mahmoud Abbas, continues to pay security prisoners despite reformed welfare criteria. Now what he's doing is he's giving money to the prisoners in jail have a fund. What do they call this? They didn't have it in the jail I worked in many years ago, but a commissary fund, I think it's called. So people could give you money into the fund. Now you could never get the money. You got credits. You could have $150 worth of credits. So you can buy things in the commissary that in America are usually quadruple priced or triple priced. It's really a shame what they do. They'll take an item that costs, $3 and sell it to you for 10. It's really bad. That's the private jails. The Bush family invests in private jails. Private jails are terrible. That's why they keep locking people up. They fill the private jails up. The people work. They pay them what, 20 cents an hour, 50 cents an hour. Where in the real world they'd get $10 or $12 or $15 an hour. So they get real cheap labor for the jail, and they don't pay any benefits. They're in jail. They're not paying. I mean, the government is paying the private jail for these people, for their food, for their clothing, for their medical, for their lights, air conditioning, water, and all that. So they have factories in the jail, and they're not paying rent on these factories, as far as I could tell. And they make goods and sell them. So he's putting money in their commissary fund if they're in jail. So a terrorist that killed a woman and a 2-month-old baby doesn't get executed in Israel. He gets life in jail. So people that killed Israelis and people that attacked Israelis and people to be known terrorists, they wind up in the Israeli jails, and Mahmoud Abbas pays them a certain amount of money in the commissary fund so they could buy cell phone service and communicate with their other terrorists, family and friends, and food and stuff like that. I understand that he was just giving them $100 a month, but I don't know. Maybe that's increased. Um, and this was supposed to stop. Now, he also used to pay the families of the terrorists that was in jail or got killed by the IDF, or Israeli citizens killed them. And I believe that's also being paid. If this is being paid, that's being paid. This is rather blatant, though. Paying the families is going to be disguised as just good old welfare. Okay. Now, that means America is going to whittle down Mahmoud Abbas to size if they can. If they can't, they'll ignore it. That's all. It's not going to mean much. What we used to do is take, I don't know if we're still doing this. We used to take, we collect the taxes that go to them. We would, if they were spending $1 million a month supporting terrorists and terrorist families, we would take $2 million a month away from their budget, but they just get more money on this. Now, the UAE is going nuts here. Now I told you Israel has soldiers and anti-missile systems over there, like Iron Domes and stuff. So we actually helped them. Okay. So what are they doing now, aside from leaving OPEC? I mean, they're in bed with Trump, as the saying goes. They're close with Trump. What are they doing? Somaliland, there's that state in Africa, Somalia, which has for decades been providing pirates to rob ships in the Red Sea area. And their motive was not the same as the Houthis. Their motive was just money, theft. And they would do kidnapping, ransom, sell things, whatever they could get, So inside the country of Somalia is a breakaway state that they don't want to recognize called Somaliland. And the only nation I think that recognized this new land is Israel. So now the UAE is going to recognize it too. Now, what is this new land going to be used for? Amongst other things, they've agreed to take Palestinians out of Palestine and let them resettle in Somaliland, of course, with getting a stipend from Israel, so many dollars per head, which would give them a good shot in the arm economically. So, because we recognize them in Somalia, it said they're going to be attacking shipping in the Middle East, as so they're becoming weird, okay? Somalia and Somaliland is getting weird. So now the UAE is going to recognize Somaliland, which is going to be where we're going to expel the Palestinians to. That's the plan. And Hamas isn't disarming, and Israel-backed militias are battling it out with Hamas in Gaza. And that's probably why Trump's not talking about getting Hamas's weapons away. The idea would just keep the militias going. How? Well, you make them salaries, generous salaries. That always goes a long way, right? Humanitarian aid for the militias, like what? Well, food from Israel. Okay, milk and strawberries and all that, right? If they get wounded or injured, you take them out of Gaza to Israel, where they can receive treatment in an Israeli hospital, which is probably, conservatively speaking, 3-4 times better than what you're going to get for treatment in Gaza. What else can they do? Communication devices, weapons, bullets, uniforms, special forces soldiers from Israel, training them, intel from Israel, where to hit, everything. So, it's hard to imagine they're going to lose, So the Hamas and Gaza are facing daily fights with the militias. And they're afraid to go out on the street because the militias will get them, It's sort of like, to use a crackpot reference, it's like a Ku Klux Klan that wants to kill Hamas. That's basically what they got, but they're not wearing sheets, and they're very, very well armed. So I'm pretty sure Trump's waiting for his moment to recognize Somaliland. uh, why is he doing this? To help Gazan people get kicked out and put into a camp in Somaliland or something like that? Why? Because this whole Gaza thing was a puppet of Iran. And the UAE really hates Iran now. I think they hate Iran as much as Netanyahu does, more. So this guy in the UAE, he learned his lesson. I think it's just a matter of time till he drops out of that trading block he's in. BRICS. He's in BRICS. He'll get out of BRICS, I think. BRICS is China, Russia, Iran, and he's not going to be happy there. Well, he doesn't have to leave BRICS. He just stops using BRICS. That's all he has to do. Then he gets to be invited to the meetings and see what they're up to and gets the bulletins and all that. So might just do that. So Trump is saying that Iran has about 20% of its missile production facilities left. We destroyed 80%. Do I think Trump's telling the truth? Yes. The missile production facilities were not fortified. They were not heavily protected. They were easily blown up. Yes. Yeah. Maybe the ones that he didn't get were the ones building the most sophisticated missiles, and they may have been, what would you call it, fortified? I don't know. Trump says we can destroy them very quickly if we don't make a deal. See, that takes oil prices. Bloop, 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 bloop. Because if you can destroy Iran, that's oil gone, See, the markets are psychologically driven. And if Iran's oil is off the board, well, then prices go up out of fear. This is funny. Here, let me tell you what else Iran's doing. And they're defeating Trump, but it's only going to buy time. But when you're dealing with psychotics like this in Iran, buying time means making more missiles and everything else. And, could come back at us hard. This comes from the Bloomberg news agency, Boomi. Iran is being forced to fill old tankers, that means a maritime ship, that are no longer in use in order to store the oil it's extracting. In other words, extracting is pumping out of the ground. Okay? So they're putting it into their old oil tankers, of which, I don't know, they might have 50. Maybe they got 80. I don't have any idea. But you see, they're taking the load off with the trains now, with this. So they're planning on winning something, okay? Storage space in Iran is running out due to the ongoing blockade and Iran's inability to export oil. This is really interesting. Now we're going to talk about our not friendly friends, Pakistan, who hates Israel and is said to have a nuclear bomb, or many. And yet they never blew us up. Ha ha ha. Yeah. And they never gave one to Iran either. Okay. Remember, here's the background. Pakistan, for some reason that I haven't come across yet, signed a mutual defense treaty with Saudi Arabia, and they already sent 13,000 soldiers and some aircraft into Saudi Arabia. And if Iran hits Saudi Arabia this next go round, well, they got to hit Iran to fulfill the treaty. So Pakistan has a common border with Iran. Now, the border runs about 900 kilometers which is roughly 540 miles. So that a 540-mile border that's a lot of border, you know? So the Pakistanis opened up 6 crossings to bypass the American blockade, and more than 3,000 containers, like container ship containers, 40 foot. They're 40 feet long, 8 feet high, and 8 feet wide. They're pretty good size. It's like the trailer on a tractor trailer truck. That's a normal conventional trailer, 40 feet by 8 feet wide, 8 feet high. And you got bigger trailers, slightly bigger, like 46, and you got 26-foot trailers, and they vary, but 3,000 containers pass through Iran via land. Well, that's not getting Iran to, get oil out, but it's getting them supplies. So you got the trains taking oil out, you got them filling their old tankers with oil, you got Pakistan sending in aid, which is probably not going to stop. It's weakening Trump's blockade, but Trump sitting there saying, so what? It'll just take longer. Well, the so what it'll take longer is a bad way of thinking. When you're going to go around making wars, you want to strike out of nowhere and you want a quick resolution in your favor. Members of the National Security Committee in the Iranian Shura, Shura Council. I have no idea under the sun what Shura means in Iranian. I have no idea. I advise immigrants in the United Arab Emirates, UAE, immigrants means they're like permanently parked themselves in UAE, to leave this country, the UAE, as soon as possible. We will attack the Emirates, UAE, with an assault that will leave no technology in this country. Do they mean it? Yeah. Yeah. Are they going to go break their peaceful situation right now over this? No. No. But they're going to get around to it. So now we're here in 12 to 22 days before the Iranians have to shut down their pumping oil wells and so forth. The pipeline, the oil wells, and that kind of thing. And if they got to shut it down, it may get so significantly gunked up, it could be months or a year even to fix it. Talk about an oil shortage, Now we're getting leakage about the damage the Iranians did to the Americans. There actually was an Iranian jet that bombed one of the U.S. bases. We don't have more info than that. They had jets. A jet actually got off and bombed the base. One jet probably dropped one bomb, maybe two bombs, but it's interesting that it happened. They probably did it after the Americans and Israelis did a bombing run and the sky was empty. They got out there and snuck out there, bombed the base, and came back. The U.S. bases have been damaged much worse than is being revealed. This is the intel people. The pictures of these bases is being blocked from the companies that collect these pictures. They're not allowed to reveal them. They're blocking it, probably in the name of war or something like that. Bahrain, which has a huge American naval base. Qatar has an air base. Bahrain has a navy base. Was significantly damaged. Okay. The Iranians hit 11 bases, and the damage is estimated to be at $5 billion. They hit a very expensive, now I don't know how expensive, but very expensive, phased array radar, a long range warning radar that America had paid for and set up there. And this is explaining to me why Trump is dragging things out. He probably wants to get that radar repaired or replaced because it's a long-range phased radar. It's very important to them to know about that so they could get early warning on their bases and also for their ships. So that's why he's buying time. But in the meantime, his plan to do the blockade is nothing short of brilliant. But to really make the blockade work, he's going to have to crack down on the trains, selling the oil and do a few things. So it's an extremely interesting set of circumstances here. And if Trump runs this blockade hard, doesn't let any workarounds, he'll do good. Now, can he stop Pakistan with humanitarian aid? I doubt it. It'd make him look bad. First sign of Pakistan sending any kind of weapons or weapons assistance then they're going to have to deal with that. Let's take a look at the live stream, see what's going on. All right. Being a Bible-believing site over the New Testament, I'm going to do some praise. I have no control over anybody doing this. There is no God like yeah, it's the Sikhs from India. I guess I might have been pronouncing it wrong. I don't know. Scripture prophecies happen now, coming to pass. You're interested about buildings and how many repent. Next, I get you focused and locked on to how many buildings. Wow, this person doesn't know me. Not interested in Holy Bible scriptures coming to pass. You don't know me, that's all I could tell you. Do you know Zechariah 12 and do you know Malachi 3 and 4, what's coming on us now? Do you know that the siege in Zechariah 12 is very much in place to a great extent right now? Or are you waiting for Ezekiel 38, 39? And are you believing that Israel that we're living in peace and safety with no bars and walls, and they're coming to take us spoil, cattle, gold, and silver? What do you believe? You like to knock people, but what do you believe? Do you know anything about Zechariah 12? I wonder. Or are you one of the ones waiting for Ezekiel 39 like the church world is? Which will happen, but it's going to be a long way off. Or do you know what Daniel 9:24 really says in Hebrew, not English? There's 270s, not 70 weeks. Do you know that? My people that follow me know that. Do you know that Yeshua returns on the last day, which he said in John 6:39, which means there's no more days? So you don't have a pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib rapture. Do you know that? My people know that. But did Yeshua tell us to watch? He did. And that's what this is. It's watching. For many years, we've covered the prophecies of Israel over and over and over again. Now we're covering the signs. We're watching. And you come out here not knowing what you're talking about, just running around saying that I don't care about the Bible, I just care about buildings. I don't know what buildings you're talking about anyway. Oh, the Dome of the Rock, maybe. Okay, but explaining to you what the motive of the Arabs is, the Muslims, the Shiite Muslims, I think is rather important so you can understand what's going on. But you should, not open up a mouth and come in and talk about things you don't know what you're talking about. Because if you were really ever following my channel, you would know that these things are not true. Yeah, it's a distraction question. I think you're right about that. Well, this person, what does he call himself? Yeshua HaMashiach of Holy Bible. That's good. I mean, but he says scripture prophecies happening now. Well, why don't he doesn't tell us what scripture prophecies are happening now, does he? Doesn't tell us. So what is he thinking about? Is he thinking rapture? Silence, right? Guy has silence now. Doesn't know what he's talking about. I'll leave the post up because it's absurd. Everybody that knows me knows that's not the case. So I don't see this guy coming in here and telling us we should do spiritual warfare either. How about that? Why don't we give him a dose of spiritual warfare? Why don't you guys lay that on him? Okay, so the watching is rather important because I believe God's using Trump to destroy Iran, possibly Yemen, which is called Edom in the Bible, and that's the destruction of it is in Jeremiah 49. Now, there's plenty of people that tell you that Edom is southern Jordan, but Jordan is Ammon and Moab, not necessarily Edom. So it doesn't add up too much to me. Okay, but Moab does get destroyed also. So if you want to talk to me about southern, well, I would say central and southern Jordan being destroyed, I would say, yeah. Now, we could fight about, is it Edom or is it Moab? But I think Edom is Yemen. Okay. And look what they're doing. They're attacking Israel for what, a year and a half, 2 years? Oh, for good 2 years, over 2 years now. So yeah, they're going to hit the recompenses. Yeah. Didn't hear this guy talk about uh, year of recompenses, day of vengeance, or um, the redemption, year of redemption. Didn't hear him talk about Yeshua appearing in the clouds. Yeah, it's just what you get. I expect. You know, you get people like this. They just knock you over anything. Um, some people just want to come in here and attack me. That's it. We get so many bad comments every day. You look at the chats and there's blocked out comments all over the place. I look at big channels where you see 600 people in the chat, 800 or something, and they don't get anywhere near the amount of blocked out comments we do. I leave the chat open anyway. So I believe that it's very likely that God's using. I can't say I have a scripture for this, but I think he's using Trump to be one of the kingpins in destroying Iran, which is likely going to include Iraq and maybe even a touch of or a piece of Syria. And I believe that the Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, and Oman are going to go with because they're part of Elam. And the fact that Iran destroys them, I don't care about that. It says that they will be leaving and scattered into every nation of the world. Okay. So that's why we're covering this because it's real important because I am of the belief that something will happen with the oil supply and Trump. Likely it is going to have something to do with oil supply. That's going to cause many nations to attack Trump, America. And the beast is Revelation 17 is going to turn on Trump, on America. And that's going to be redemption trigger, because you're going to be getting to redemption very quick from there. Those of you that survived the sword, let Zion come to mind. So you're not going to get out immediately, but those that are of the elect, many are called but few are chosen. The chosen, the elect, are not going to suffer, and they will get out. That's like a guarantee. It is a guarantee. We're not going to suffer from that. It says, the Lord says to get out of there so you don't get punished along with the nation. Even though you're not following Moses' law, the Lord still recognizes your righteousness through Yeshua. You're under grace. You don't have to do any of that law, Moses' law stuff. So you're getting out. That's why I'm putting such a big emphasis on studying this war and talking about it constantly, because it can go boom like this, and then boom. I want you guys ready. Okay? Let Zion come to mind. I want you ready, and you're probably going to have to spread this good news. This is the good news to other people. The angels rejoice when the daughter of Babylon gets destroyed. They're keeping Israel in a rut. They've got the yoke around our neck. Who do you think has the yoke around our neck? Japan, Taiwan, who? I mean, America. Russia a little bit, maybe. Not so much, since they lost Syria and they don't have any bases in Syria, really not so much. Maybe that's why Netanyahu stopped listening to Putin. I don't know. So we're basically close. Now, we're not going to know the day of the hour till it hits. But I'm watching this, and the pieces could crumble pretty quickly, and Elijah and Enoch could appear, as in Malachi 3, real fast. Real fast. A lot of people will say, oh, they'll never mess up the oil supply. But, let me tell you how easy it is, okay? Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, and Oman go, and Iran goes, okay? And Saudi Arabia is going to take a lot of damage. Okay, Jordan doesn't export oil, so that's kind of moot. Iraq does. They're going to go as part of Elam. And Saudi Arabia is already getting their refineries and stuff hit. Their oil pipeline pumping station got hit. They're having trouble. So you got the oil going from Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. Zelensky in Ukraine is knocking down Putin's oil real easy. He's hitting their refineries every week, I think. That's cutting Putin's production down, right? Now, Trump's got what? Venezuela, the largest oil reserves in the world. How much control does Trump really have over Venezuela? I don't know. Substantial, I expect. It's not hard to imagine a fight over Venezuelan oil with China, and it gets destroyed. Now you're left with just American oil. But where is American oil? It's basically in Louisiana and Texas. And the Port Arthur had been hit twice, plus another oil facility, which we believe were missiles, were drones coming out of the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America now. So that could happen too. And then the Texas and Louisiana stuff goes offline. Then you have the Alaska stuff, which Russia could take care of easy enough. And then you got no oil in the world. And that's why they come attack us riding on horses in Malachi 3. Imagine what the place looks like. Cars dead on the freeways all over the place. You know, cars, they run out of gas on the freeways and they're blocking the freeways, well, what will they do? Well, at first they'll push them off the side of the road and keep the road open, but that may not last. It might. Everything in America is going to be finished when that happens. But you do go out on the ships of Tarshish, and I don't think the ships of Tarshish are sailboats. Could be wrong, of course. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's going to be some oil. Or maybe the ships just got full tanks. I don't know. They got full tanks, they just make one run and they don't come back. That's all. And the crews and everything stay in Israel. That could be the case. Well, they're really not going to go directly to Israel. They're going to go to the wilderness where you pass under the rod and enter into the bond of the covenant and then to Israel. So I don't have all the answers. We're not told everything. Eye has not seen and ear has not heard what the Lord's going to do when we hit redemption. It's just going to be so fantastic. You have no idea. I mean, we get a hint. That's all we get. We look through a glass darkly. We get some idea, but not. It's just going to be great. Okay? It's a double portion. It's going to be super great. Are we going to have it like the people in the pre-flood days before Noah's flood? Better. You have redemption. They didn't have redemption. They were living as sinners. They were practicing debauchery and all that stuff. You never have happiness when you live in sin. There's no happiness. You'd think when you live in sin, you make the flesh happy. And after an hour or two or three or four, or whatever, the flesh is not happy again. The flesh needs constant feeding. So if you start feeding the flesh all the time, like a rich person like Trump or a king or something like that, well, then you become crazy usually. People with this generational wealth, The children of the ultra rich are, for the most part, messed up people because they're in a world where people value materialism and showing off how many great goods you have. Okay. Oh, I got a plane. I got a Rolls Royce. I got a yacht. I got 11 houses. And, what do you do with all these things? People have 11 houses, but it's common for people to have 3 or 4 for these ultra rich. Well, they'll have a place in New York, maybe in LA. They'll have a resident mansion that they live in someplace, maybe in Beverly Hills. And they'll have a ski resort home, and they might have a place in Europe. And have a 230-foot yacht that can travel the world. And 230-foot yacht can travel the world. And, when they go around these things, okay, they go to the yacht. They don't usually come with 10 suitcases. They have most of the clothes they need on the yacht for different seasons and whatnot, because they don't care about buying clothes. It doesn't affect them with the money. So they have the closets filled up. So they get on the boat, and now they got to look for, oh, what kind of shoes do I have here? Do I have boat shoes, running shoes? What kind of bathing suits? Where did I put the bathing suits? This is normal for them, right? Then they got to look up what the name of the chef is on the boat because they forget. And, their butler on the boat, what his name is, and the guy in charge of security, what his name is, and, the captain and all that. And then they go to their house in Martha's Vineyard in the summer. They might have a nice, modest 7 or 8,000 foot house on the beach, right? And it's nice and cool in the summer, and they go up there. Same thing. Where are my clothes? Where's something to eat? What's going on in the refrigerator? I got to look up the name of the maid. I got to look up the butler's name. I got to look up this one's name, that one's name. Where's the car? We have a car here. Where are the keys to the car? And where do I go downtown? And all this stuff. What's the chef's name? And they keep directory. They look this stuff up, right? And they're not like you. You might have your 2,000, 1,800 square foot house, and you know where everything is, and you're used to everything, and it's your home, and you're comfortable there, and you relax there. It's not really like that for them. They're around servants all the time, and that's not a lot of fun. I mean, if you're a guy, you can't walk around in your underwear, right? Well, you can't. If you got kids and they're little kids, you can walk around in your underwear. If you got big kids, you can't. But when they're, 18 months old, you can certainly do it, But if it's just the man and the wife in the house, that you can walk around in your underwear. That's important to a lot of guys. Okay, so now you got to deal with you go in the house and you got to tell the cook what you want. Now, the cook probably remembers things about you, but you don't remember things about the cook. Then you start in, where's my computer here? Where did I put this computer? I want some suntan lotion. Where the heck is the suntan lotion? And then you got to get a hold of the maid, and she knows where these things. They don't know what's going on. Okay. Now, a lot of the kings, like Louis the 14th in France, he had his regular palace, which was huge. He probably had, 20 to 40 acres surrounded by walls, and he had gardens and streams and fountains and statues and all this stuff to look at. Maybe he didn't have statues. I don't know. And, different buildings and all that. And then they had another palace they'd go to for the summer where they had cooler weather. They didn't have air conditioning, so they put things in a cooler place. So they would do that, If they didn't have a cooler place per se in some countries, what they would do is go to elevation. If you could get 1,500 feet elevation, you'd be really surprised how much cooler things get. They get 10, 12 degrees cooler. So if you're hitting 92, you're only hitting 80. So it starts getting a lot more pleasant. But if you get up to 2,500, chances of you getting any weather over 75, 76 degrees is pretty slim. It could happen, but it's probably not. You're going to have maybe 80 at the top of your weather, So you really, for 2-3 hours in the daytime, so you really don't get a big problem with that. At night, it's nice and cool. So they would transfer. That's how they did it. North American Indians used to have a camp they would live in the winter, which would probably be down low someplace, so it's a lot warmer, and they would beat the snow if they could, and they might travel for a month or something to get further south or wherever to get warmer weather, and then they would come back when it got hot, so they could live in the cooler areas in the heat. And I think they probably planted crops before they left, so they knew when they came back the crops would grow, or they took a shot at it anyway. It probably worked a lot of times. Um, so they would travel back and forth. They usually depict them as traveling with their teepees with them, but did they really travel with their teepees, or maybe they just had two sets of teepees? It's a heck of a lot easier, right? And they just get their clothes and some food together and take the journey. Much easier. Um, and did they never live in a hard structure like a cabin made out of wood? I don't know. Maybe some did. You know, I guess they kept themselves comfortable in the teepee. They had an opening. And in the cool weather, they would keep some sort of fire inside the place and probably just dig a pit in the dirt inside the teepee, and the smoke would go up, and they could stay warm. I don't know how many layers of animal skin or whatever they put on the outside, but they probably put more than one to keep it insulated, and then they probably put stuff down on the ground so they could walk around without getting dirt on them and without getting as cold. You know, the Europeans that moved to North America preferred to build a hard structure out of wood, which is not portable, but I think it's a lot warmer. They went for a fireplace design, and I guess they slept in one room uh, if it was cold, so they would be in the room with the fireplace and keep feeding it all night. And they probably stayed nice and toasty that way. Uh, if they were going to go off into different bedrooms, then they would be cold unless they put fireplaces in the bedrooms, which is not likely. So maybe in the summer months they used these other rooms, but in the winter they just stayed in one room. And they could clog up the logs with mortar or mud type mortar and keep the drafts out. They have a wood floor, and they could put animal skins on that for like carpet. And they usually had an easy time getting firewood. There was plenty of lumber around where they would usually build these things, so they could keep feeding, store the wood outside the house a short distance. And then when night came, you just brought a bunch of wood in, and then you just threw it in the fire, and that was it. Uh, and they stayed relatively dry in the rain. I imagine they probably got leaks every now and then. Uh, they had trouble getting quality windows, so they probably put curtains inside. So the leaking, when it was cold out and windy, then the cold air probably came in, so they probably put curtains there to stop it or slow it down. And it was rough. The door probably didn't fit precisely in the frame, and they had problems like that. But they weren't really trying to build a house to stop people from breaking in, because if they were not there, then somebody could come and just throw a rock through the window and climb in. So I don't think they put a lot of trouble into securing the place with keys. They probably had something that would keep the door closed when they weren't there. predominantly trying to keep animals out from the house, Um, yeah. So the rich got a real confusing life. It's not, real simple. And they have, um, on a given day, their stockbrokers are talking to them about different things. And they could have many different brokers in different countries. Real estate people are talking to them. People in companies they might own are talking to them about problems. And, they don't want to hear this stuff. So the real rich people, not the ones that just started to make money, the generational ones where the father and the grandfather and the great grandfather all had a lot of money. They don't work because if they go to work, their life falls apart because they have to deal with all these issues. So what they do is they hire presidents of corporations. They stay on the board of directors, which means 2, 3 times a year they go to a meeting for 2 or 3 hours and make decisions, and they might fire a president or a vice president and change him, that kind of thing, right? And they don't bother running the company. They don't want to be bothered with it. They have a law firm that usually has lawyers in there. They're what's called a boutique law firm usually. They don't have 600 or 900 lawyers. They're not litigators. They coddle the rich, and they might have 10, 12 lawyers, and they handle the problems they have. A lot of the problems, not lawsuits, other kinds of problems. And, they got an aircraft or 2 or 3 aircraft, so they need pilots. It's so confusing. Their life is very complicated. They got yachts, they got people taking care of the yachts. So the lawyers talk to these people and keep that away from them. And then in their houses, they have a butler, and the butler's in charge of hiring and firing and disciplining the maids, the gardener, the chauffeur, the cooks, repairmen, handymen, other kinds of people. That's his job. So he takes care of making sure everything is running in the house smooth. But they don't have to deal with that. And then the presidents of the corporations run their companies. And the lawyers take care of their technical issues. And they keep themselves as far away as they can from being in the management of these entities. And then what do with their life? Well, I don't know. Some of them get into charities, which is a way for them to hobnob with the other rich, crazy people. And their children grow up and don't care about wealth because they grew up with yachts and jets and mansions and servants, and they don't care about it. They universally, there's a small amount of them that fall into the game and want to be just like mom and dad. But a tremendous amount of them, I don't know the numbers, a good amount of them don't want this anymore. They hang around with other kids because they meet them in these private schools and neighborhoods they live in. So they hang around with other kids that are from the generational wealthy people, and they have a lot of trouble finding meaning in life. They don't know the Lord, and they don't know what the purpose of it is. They don't have any desire to go out and acquire mansions and jets and yachts and Ferraris and Rolls Royces. That's no value to them. They had all that as children, and they saw it didn't bring any peace and happiness to the people that had it, i.e., their families and the other families that were friends with their family. They didn't get any really good satisfaction out of that. So that doesn't satisfy them. They don't care about that. So they want to go off on their own and do what they do. They might want to be a painter, maybe a musician, a writer, an actor, a dancer, who knows? They try to find some way to express themselves and get interested in something other than getting rich. And some of them get interested in drugs and alcohol, and some of them are just crazy, you know. So you've got, all different kinds of rich, and they're not, so great. I saw a thing about the guy that has control of the Johnson and Johnson fortunes, the stock of the company and stuff like that. And this guy, I don't know how many billions this guy had. He probably he could have had 50 billion or 30, or he was way up there. And he was sitting there telling his son, I don't care what you do, you got to work. You want to get the inheritance, you want to get your trust fund, you got to work. I don't care if you work as a waiter in a restaurant. You can pick whatever you want to do, but you got to work. So he had a little bit of sanity, knowing that if the kid didn't work, he'd be in a bad way. But what did this guy do? Did he work? No, he would be plays as a painter, oil painter, like he was a Van Gogh or a Rembrandt or something like that. He didn't know what to do with himself. You get up in the morning and you have no financial needs, and you could go buy anything you want, and all your bills are paid, and you don't have to do anything. Your food gets cooked, the house gets cleaned, the laundry gets done. You don't have any responsibilities to do anything. Some fall apart, you know. So the reason the children are not chasing this is they know that this is not an answer. Money can be good in that it can enable you to do things that you want to do and not do things you don't want to do, like go shopping or bring the car in to get the oil changed or sit on the phone with voicemail to try to get something done with some company when you could have a personal assistant that does it for you. You don't have to stay on the phone for an hour. That's a more of a healthy viewpoint, what to do with money. Okay. But we'll have that type of thing pretty soon. And you'll learn how to do it. It's not hard. You learn how to deal with servants. And you learn how to dedicate your time to other things. You will make the decisions, and you'll be very involved with your family and the children you're going to have. And the materialism, I think, is going to be different. We're not going to be, as automated. I don't think we're going to have a virtual world to live in anymore. Be much nicer. Will be more simple. It'll be more personal, warm. You know, it'd be much nicer. Much nicer. This is Satan's world. Satan's been steering the ship with this world. And this is the junk he came up with. And it's a lousy lifestyle. Yeah. And we'll have a much better one. Okay, so I'll get a prayer for us. My Heavenly Father Jehovah, I pray for me and my wife and all the true believers that we would have your strength, stamina, and endurance, that we would have your healing and recuperative power flow through us, healing whatever needs to be healed all the time. I pray for us and our animals and pets to be safe and secure, happy, healthy, and whole. I pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I pray that I can make better videos and teach better. I pray that you guys and myself, we all understand the scriptures better. And I pray that if any of us need job, like employment, we find it. We find good work at good pay. And if we need clients or customers for our business, we find those too. And I pray we have adequate finances plus extra. And I pray we all have good health too. And I pray for us to get more wisdom and more faith. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and some spiritual warfare. My Heavenly Father Jehovah, I loose for me and my wife and all the true believers from the households and families any witchcraft or spells coming from people serving the unclean spirits or unclean spirits themselves. It's all null and void, no value, no effect forever. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And I pray for me and my wife and all the true believers in their households and families. If anyone in there has a demon, I command the demon to come out of these people immediately, never return unto them again, forever. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. You might have cousins or distant family or someone that's really got a demon and trying to be mean to you and that kind of thing. There you go. Okay, so I hope you got something out of this. I'll keep updating. And it doesn't look like Trump's going to be doing any attacks in the near future, but you never know. And you don't know what Iran's going to do. And I'm not buying Trump's talking about them negotiating, and I'm not so sure they really are. Um, um, so I don't know what's going to happen with them. We're going to have to watch this. Iran and Trump themselves may not know if they're going to start attacking again. The way Netanyahu's behaving, it looks like no, they're not. But we'll see. So I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I'm out.